Hello and good morning, everyone who is joining us live for this broadcast. Thank you so much for deciding to spend your time and attention here with us. These are the commodities of today, and they're really, really restricted. So I'm really grateful to have your company here with us. This morning, we're going to be talking about AI and how we're integrating in our AI work practices within organizations, within small businesses, within any sort of activity that organizations are thinking about productivity, that are thinking about how to streamline and how to make our jobs easier. We're also going to be talking about outsourced thinking when it comes to AI, when we should and we shouldn't do that. And we're going to be talking about AI and creativity. My guest today is Bob McGannon. He's a unbelievable project management expert. He has set up project management offices on 3 continents. He is an author. He's got a book called Intelligent Disobedience, and he's also an author to numerous LinkedIn Learning courses in the LinkedIn Learning Library, spanning subjects such as project management, business analysis, and leadership. Now, Bob and I both share a passion for teaching and learning, and that's where our paths merged. We have a joint course on LinkedIn Learning about AI-powered agile strategies for modern project managers. And we wanted to share some of the insights that we gathered during the collection of that insight, filming the course, and in the aftermath of the course, as things have moved on and we're using AI more and more in our work practices. What does that mean? How does that feel? A lot of people seem to be still unsure about AI and how to incorporate AI, not only people, but organizations. So we'd like to, and we're very, very fortunate to have Bob's extensive experience on changes in technological changes, and especially within the AI transformation. Now, Bob, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, based on when you may be with us or hearing this, if you're listening to it recorded.
Yes, indeed. We're streaming across time zones. So wherever you are based, welcome to this. If you're watching this as a replay, thank you again for deciding to spend your time with us. And whether you're live or whether you're watching it as a replay, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments, and Bob and I will answer them live during this discussion, or following the discussion, we'll be monitoring the comments and making sure that we answer those questions.
And any comments are always good. Mike's the first one out there. It's great to know that it's all working and it's been streaming out and it's being received. So thank you, Mike, for letting us know that indirectly. And good afternoon to you as well.
Yes, good morning from the US. That's right. Right, Bob, I wanted to pick up, obviously AI is the topic of the
year, if not the decade, right?
But before launching into, what is it and how do you use it, and the tips and tricks and the myths and how do we collate all of the learnings around agile and project management and sort of deep diving into that topic, I wanted to pick up from a little bit before AI came about. And since you've got an enormous breadth of experience behind you, this is not the first tech change that you have been
No,
through.
no. So let me show you part of this enormous experience, meaning I'm old, right? I can remember when the calculator first became a very, very easy
Right.
consumer product, right? In early 70s. And the discussion about no one's going to know how to do arithmetic anymore. And
Yes.
mathematics is going, how do we teach mathematics now? Because and did it cause some adjustments? Yeah, absolutely. It caused adjustments. And was that were those adjustments sort of awkward for people, particularly teachers? Absolutely. And making sure that the kids didn't have calculators out and everything. But ultimately, it became a tool that doesn't do math for us. You need to understand the formulas to put into it.
Yep.
But it makes you quicker, right? It enhances the quality, and I think that's really even more important than quicker. It enhances the quality of what it is that you can produce, because as long as you type in all the right numbers and the formula, you understand the formula, it's not going to make a mistake in its calculations. So you're going to get right. You're going to get the right answer. Other iterations, as the internet became more a part of our everyday lives, right? You've got medical people who can look things up, right? It does, you can do some searches. Legal people can do some searches, and it enhanced our ability to be able to do, that kind of research, right? Today, that's being speeded up even more because you've got the AI able to look through things and a little bit more context and that sort of stuff. But in every case, right, the lawyer needs to understand the law, so what they get out of a search in the old days, and now AI now, right? You have to apply it. And I think in every single case, and we need to make it the case with this one, and this is a little bit trickier to do, that is this is not, certainly there are some productivity gains in that, AI can write notes for you in a meeting, so you don't have to concentrate on doing that. You absolutely should review them before you send them out, right? So there are some productivity gains, but really what I think we need to be focusing on, and rethinking your job in a world with AI, is the title of this, is to say, how can we use this to enhance the quality of what it is that we're producing?
Yeah.
Right? And each of these technological breakthroughs that is now, now we're talking about AI, comes about when and is best used when people are ultimately using it to update and enhance the quality of what they produce, the quality of their deliverables.
Yeah, I think obviously AI is extremely powerful compared to some of the tech that we've been going through. But at the end of the day, AI is another tool that we can incorporate. It's another way of enhancing the work product, the outcome. It's enhancing our own ability even to be able to hold a discussion, hold a conversation, enhance our writing, and so on. But I think people need to always remember that at the back of their heads. AI is a tool. Right. It's a tool there to serve a purpose. It's not going to replace anything. It will alter how we do things significantly. I think there's no doubt in that. But also we need to intentionally use that tool to make the outcomes better. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important that we understand that. I think we have to educate ourselves on AI. We have to educate ourselves on what a good prompt is. We have to understand how to have a conversation with AI. It is not, a query and a response, right? It's not like you go into internet, you ask a search, and you get an outcome and then you read it, right? It's not. The ability to refine, add additional detail, put some nuances into it as you is to conduct a really valid conversation with it. But that conversation does not and should not replace thinking, your thinking. right? Going
Yeah.
back to what we talked about, the legal person needs to understand whether they're doing a straight internet search from, a number of years ago or AI now, whether the AI has extracted the right things that have come from the right context.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's the really important thing that we, and I'll say this again, you always review what it is that you get with a bit of logic and understanding. That's not something that, we can overcome right now, and probably never will, right? With the way
Yes.
that it's going. Okay.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
need to have that knowledge. Therefore, it is, you have to have the idea. You have to have the concept of what it is you're trying to do. In my project management context, this is the nature of the project, and these are the risks I know.
Mm.
All right. Some are going to be tied to the nature of the project. Some are going to be tied to the nature of the organization, right?
Yeah.
That I
Yeah.
work in,
Yeah.
because of, culture, or, staffing levels, or whatever the case may be. But
Mm.
AI then can also provide some things like additional risks to consider, right?
Yeah.
That you might not have thought of, or another flavor of risk because it's out there, right? And
Mm.
again, another caveat that I think everybody's saying, but it's worth saying here, is you don't want to put all of that information into the AI and share things, outside of
Yeah.
your organization that
Yeah.
others shouldn't be able to see. But so I can say, here's the nature of the project. Here's
Mm.
what's going on. Okay. What kind of risks, and can it help you with your thinking? So, I hadn't thought of that one. Or, gee, I thought of that one. I didn't think it was high probability. This is coming up with something that happens again. Maybe I should rethink this. Right.
Mm.
So again, it helps you increase the quality of the output and the deliverables you create.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think going back to your previous point, education on AI is a must. I think a lot of people are using it as a bit of a search engine, and
Yeah.
putting a generic query, and you get a generic answer, right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
probably doesn't give you that depth that AI can truly excel at.
Right.
Once you learn how to prompt it and learn how to talk to it, and learn how to refine and iterate the query so that it really drills down to what
Yeah.
you actually need and how you can refine the output and
Yeah.
make it so that, like you said, if there's another risk you haven't considered, or if there's another scenario for your plan, that it comes up with those considerations. Now, again,
Yeah.
there are only considerations, right? And I think
Sure.
that's where
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
need to be cognizant of.
Yeah. I think what we need to do at a rudimentary level, you wouldn't ask a dentist what to do if you had a problem with your foot.
Mm,
Right. So when I put a prompt in, my first thing is, who am I talking to? Who do I want to talk to?
yeah,
So I'll say, from the perspective of a project manager with over
yeah,
15 years of experience. Okay. Or,
yeah,
someone that is has been involved with real estate law for dot 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 dot
mm,
dot,
yeah,
if I could put a contract into it that I've gotten, right? Please review this contract and tell me, okay, so
yeah,
you want to have, who are you going to talk to? What references do you want the
mm,
AI to use to ultimately compile a response for you? Right.
yeah, yeah,
And then as explicit as you can be about what kind of response you want, if there are any nuances associated with, in an organization, for instance, create a plan in an organization where, we have 3 primary languages. So
mm,
you'll get, additional items in the response that says, okay, you need to translate these in these languages, or, you'll want to review this to make sure that it looks good in French and is
yeah,
understood by French speakers as well as English speakers, whatever the case may be, right? You can go through that. And then if you want the response in a certain format,
mm,
ask it
you
for
can
that
specify.
format. I mean, one of the really good things to have a set of instructions that you might have compiled from people, and and sometimes just putting it into a flow chart is a really onerous exercise. Some people could do it quickly because if they do it more often, put the instructions in and ask the AI to do it for you. Again, you need to know what you want. You'll need to know whether it's accurate or not, but it can compile this for you to help you increase the quality of your output.
Yeah. And I love that you can compile a directory of prompts, and you can, pick and choose what am I actually asking for? What is the output that I need? What is the format that I need? And there's different ways that the AI can structure that. And I think at the end of the day, people just need to go and explore that. They need to be courageous enough to go into an AI tool, whatever that AI tool is, and just play with it, explore the inputs and the outputs, and find their flow. If that's not something that's mandated by an organization, feel free to go and do it in your own time. But there's so much that AI can do. Now, of course, there's a lot that it can do. There's a lot it can't do. Where should we be careful about outsourcing our thinking to AI? Like, what
Sure.
has been your
Sure.
experience, especially when it comes to project management, managing risks, managing plans? We don't want managing, stakeholder expectations, and the policies within organizations. There's a lot of gray space, I think, at the moment. We're in this transition period where we're figuring things out. What has been your experience with striking the right balance?
So let's talk about what outsourcing thinking to AI looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. I like to go with a positive sense of an answer and then talk about the negative, but I think in this case, it's probably easier to talk about the negative sense of an answer, right? And then go to the positive. So if what you get back out of AI doesn't contain an original idea, if it's just regurgitating, validating, or trying to tweak your idea, that may be a good thing if you're really experienced. But if you're approaching something that you're not certain of, and that's the kind of answer you get, you're probably, and then you go with that, that's outsourcing thinking. You need to do more research. You really have. The AI hasn't done that for you. If you don't have an original idea, an original thought that ultimately comes out of what it is that you're searching for. If you hear something from AI, you read something from AI, and you put it in the project management context, right? If you don't have a story or experience that validates that, and you go with it and just take it as truth and something that you have to consider, you've again outsourced thinking to AI. Not really wise. I would be doing more queries. I'd be talking with other humans. I would look for another way to decide how best to go forward. If you get an AI response and it doesn't trigger a new thought or an idea for you, it's like, oh, hang on a minute. That, let's say you're querying for risks. Yeah, that risk doesn't apply here, but that's interesting because that makes you think of other potential risks, right? So it's triggered a good idea. If it's not triggering any good ideas, again, and you just go with what you get out of AI, probably not wise. If let's say you put some AI input into your risk plan or whatever, right? If a manager asks you a question about that and you don't have the answer for it, this is kind of goes back to you don't have that experience or something to validate it, you're going to look really dull. All right. So you have outsourced your thinking to AI if you can't answer follow-up questions to something you've taken from AI and put it in your document. Another way to not look really smart about this is, and I'll talk about this more later in a creativity point of view, but if you look at my writing and AI's writing, it's different. And that's true with most any individual because of the way AI writes. And I think we'll probably talk about that here in a bit. So it's not your language, it's not your style, and someone can see that it's not yours. That again is going to make you look dull, and you've outsourced your thinking to AI if you do that. When you fail to scrutinize the responses as you put something else out, you don't check the references that AI use for context. As I said in this article that I wrote, just don't. Enough said. Just don't. Right? And then AI responses, that don't reflect the particulars of your situation. You know, if I look at a project plan that's come about from a consulting organization where all the consultants are working full time on delivering a project for a client, versus if I'm running a project inside a client organization where the people that are on my project team have a day job as well. They have operational responsibilities, okay? And the way you schedule them is totally different. You get a schedule out of AI that doesn't have that reflection and those conditions in it, it's not going to be easily adopted. You're going to look really, really dull, okay? So it has to reflect the particulars of your situation, and you need to be able to adapt it to what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, I just, want to say that's when you've outsourced thinking to AI. Those are the indicators.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you're using it, on the other hand, like I said, to maybe check to see if there are other risks, to taking, if you have the ability to take a contract and put it in and have it, look for things. And again, that doesn't mean you don't read the contract yourself or get with people that understand and see if there's any gotchas in there for your organization or things you want to address. But then, you go out there and it could, give you some good points of things that you'd want to consider. But again, you need to put your perspective and point of view in when you ask the question. Okay.
Yes.
And you put it in the prompt to AI. That's going to improve the products you produce versus become the products you produce.
Yeah. So kind of just to summarize a few of the lessons learned and takeaways, be really specific in your prompting. What is it that you're actually asking and you're trying to get out? What knowledge you're trying to ask the AI to come back with, or analysis. Check the references. We know about AI hallucinating and providing different stories that what we actually asked it for. So make sure you check the references, and then be really considerate of the output. So does it apply to your environment, to your situation, to your organization, to your project situation? And yes, it can be a great enhancer. But at the same time, as you, Bob, said, if you let it run the show and run off to a completely different direction, and then somebody asks you a question as to why your report looks like this, and can you provide some more information, it's not the best result. So make sure you do your homework.
Yeah. I just want to say something. Mike has said something out there that AI still has a lot of maturing to do. And we're talking about the limitations here, but it won't be long until that changes. I certainly think it's going to improve. It'll be interesting. Right now, what it's doing is creating inference logic from a mass amount of information, and it's looking at patterns and reflecting back to us the patterns that it sees. It's not inventing a new pattern.
No.
Okay. Body language, your body language when you're nervous.
Yep.
It's going to be different than my body language when I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Right. Some people, they get quiet. Some people get chatty. Okay. I have a very strange body reaction. When I get nervous, I yawn a lot. Right. Well, what is the AI going to say? Bob yawned a lot. He's tired, and is going to make presumptions that I'm tired. No, I'm not tired. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The person that sits still is fidgeting a lot, and I mean, we're all different. And training the AI to understand anybody's habits might be something that you could do as an individual if you're good enough to do that and put it in there. But then again, that's private information that you could argue shouldn't be in an AI, right? So Mike makes a very, very valid point, but I also want to put a caveat on that says, can AI build a perfect project schedule? Absolutely. Can you tie it to calendars in the organization to help you put together a schedule? Absolutely. But the big button caveat to that statement is everybody has to use their calendar the same way for that to be valid. For instance, my lovely wife puts to-do items as all-day appointments in her calendar, and she's a very organized person, and it does really well. But if you were to put her calendar, she's never available. She's not, because she's got these 5 or 6 all-day appointments, right?
Yeah.
So the AI would have to know that's so you'd have to say, okay, this is all we're going to use our calendar. We're going to use our calendar the same way. If you want to do to-do lists, you got to do it someplace else, which, by the way, would probably throw her off and make her pretty upset, right? But if you did all that, and if everybody complied, you could probably build a schedule on people's availability using AI and create a perfect project schedule. So, AI can get better, but the more we expect it and hope for it to improve, the more data we have to give to it. And that's going to be the limitation. I think that's going to be the limitation. We got to understand that limitation.
Yeah. And I think talking about maturing and talking about, the models getting more and more refined, the large language models, I mean, we're already on that path, right? We've seen it become better and better at what it needs to do. Now, what a lot of the hype is that there will be very specific large language models that maybe, one completely specific to project management. Then you query it about everything to do with projects. There may be one specific as how to engage stakeholders. So there would be these nuances, and as things are getting better, the language models will get more refined, and the outcomes will get more refined. But I guess ultimately, it's not only about using the tool; it's about how people connect with it, and I think that's where a lot of these initial teething issues and initial frustrations and initial, I guess, fear about how we get to see the positives and what it can bring. There's still a lot of hype about, people losing their jobs because of AI. How has AI shifted your perspective, and what was your kind of journey with AI when it comes to using it professionally?
Look, I'm really excited. I mean, I'm naturally just curious, right? So I've been playing with AI because I want to play with AI, just because I'm just morbidly curious, which I think is a really good quality to learn how to best use this tool. Because you can try stuff and reject the answer, right? As a good friend of mine says, have a play. Just have a play. Right. And so I think that's been part and parcel of what it is that I've done. And I've tried to have it do project schedules, and I've tried to build various elements of a project plan. And heck, I'm a fan of, I love the saxophone. Right. So I said to AI, look, I'd like hits from, things that hit the top 50 on the pop charts from the 1980s to the 2010s, through the 2010s, of the things that hit the top 50 of the pop charts that feature a saxophone. Now, that's going to take me forever if I had to do that in a traditional search. I got a fantastic list of things that I could look out and put into, my Spotify, Apple Music, whatever the case may be. Okay. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So it's it's very good, and it does some things that we couldn't possibly do, or take us tons of time to do. So I think there's a ways in which we could use this, and I think we need to understand what we're trying to use it for, and make sure the intent is valid. It's not outsourcing thinking that we talked about, but also that it is suitable to what the tool can do. And by the way, that question needs to be re-asked every 3 months, probably, right? Because it is indeed, going back to one of the things that Mike talked about, it is indeed doing better and better. So
as things are moving on, I think a lot of the the policies and a lot of the guidelines that organizations put through or put forward need to be relooked. So it's a very dynamic time to be on the front foot with AI.
Yeah.
In your experience, are organizations being negative about the AI? Are they being conservative? Or have you seen that, the risks and the drawbacks are sort of in the background more rather than in the forefront?
I think more than anything else, organizations are not having enough of a cultural corporate-wide think about what it is that they want to do with AI and what therefore they should expect from it. Okay. Now, someone that is whose sole job in an organization is to take notes at meetings.
Yeah.
Their job is at risk, and probably should be, in that it's going to be much more efficient to do this with AI. Again, as long as someone's reviewing it and checking it, right? My son-in-law actually is a web developer, and he and I had a long conversation about this. And he says, how long is it going to be before no human is actually, developing a website? It's going to be tweaking a website. Maybe it's the original architecture for a website, but even that probably is a role and a job that's at risk, if you will, right?
I think in its current state, right? But as AI is evolving, so would roles evolve, right?
Yeah.
So what
and that's been true. That's been true of new technologies, right? And it takes away jobs and creates other jobs. So that's a whole that's probably a whole other train of thought that we could have that I don't feel totally qualified to predict either. But it's going to be an interesting thing to evolve, and so we need to have that policy, right? And we should be training people specifically on what they can and can't put into a prompt, because you want to have a corporate organization about this. You should have an expectation as to how AI is going to be used, right? Is it used to validate, right? I mean, so you have a lawyer comes up with a position, okay? And maybe you use AI then to say, what are give me 4 or 5 references that reflect, what it is that I'm saying here and what the recommendation is. And if there's anything that's contrary to that, why, and what the outcome of any, legislation or court proceedings there were associated with this. And then you could take a really good objective view associated with it, right? If, there's 5, if the AI gives you 15 positive one and 1 negative one, are you comfortable with the outcome? If it gives you 5 positive ones and 5 negative ones, are you comfortable with the outcome? Probably not. Okay. So if you're going to use it as a validation tool, you will want some criteria to say, okay, based on what you get from AI, this is what we're going to be comfortable with. This is what we're not going to be comfortable with, right? And then you could probably get in more detail underneath that as to the sub points in a finding or whatever the case may be. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that's interesting in this, and I noticed Frank's comment. Frank, I appreciate the fact, and I think it's cool that you're going for the ultimate project management intelligence platform. And you may come up with something really good. So I am curious that you put that there. I have worked with a number of different senior leader project sponsors, and their attitudes, their knowledge, their hot buttons, their abilities for foresight, their inabilities for foresight, okay, have had a drastic impact on how we ultimately use these tools and what we expect from it and whether a plan's going to work. So
that's a great
and I just see a comment. He's come back and said this is a misuse of the tech. I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about, because Frank and everybody that's listening to us live, we get these comments but we don't get them instantly. So that could have been something I said 10 seconds ago or a minute and a half ago. So
right.
anyhow, not to get
And
us off track, just everybody knows that
we can connect after this conversation.
Yes,
and
yeah.
it'll be
Absolutely.
fantastic to hear what you're going through, Frank, and
Yeah,
to get
absolutely.
the insights.
Absolutely.
Going back on the job evolution and organizations putting through these guidelines and policies in place, Bob, where's the balance between for professionals, for project managers, for business analysts, anyone going through or being in a corporate work environment? Do people step forward and help define what their job would look like with AI, or do you think it's the organizations that need to be the forward thinkers? Like, where is the balance?
Sure. I think that's going to change from role to role and context to context, right?
Mm.
So let me just, you had mentioned my book, Intelligent Disobedience, and I just want to talk about one element that's in that book for a minute, right? And I said I can tell how much empowerment exists for people in an organization very easily by just reading the job description. Okay. And there's two types of job descriptions. So they say, what? The first is, Christina, you need to manage this process. You're going to run this process to create an outcome.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what the language sounds like. The other one is you're going to create this outcome. And here are processes we have to help you. Right. In the first instance, the process is being treated as being more important than the outcome. In the second one, the outcome is the most important, and the process is something that helps you get there, but you might have some variability associated with that. Right now, in some contexts, you need to lean one way or the other. I totally understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take AI into the mix. Okay. I can define how we're going to do things. I mean, I talked earlier about, a legal exercise where you go to AI and you validate, whether what you've come up with, is going to work, if there's any precedence and that sort of thing. And I could do that much more quickly than you could do it when you used to be able to search manually on the internet, because you can get access to a lot more. And then there was once upon a time you were looking through books. Right? It's become so much more. So what's the expectation? I think, and if I am a manager defining a job, it's better that you have a corporate-wide policy for how you're going to use AI, and then you incorporate that into a job description. If you are not in an organization that does that, I've told this to a couple of people, be the tail that wags the dog. Put together a perspective that you think fits your corporate culture, fits the nature of your job, and say, this is how I think I should use or could use AI. Present it to your manager and have them, edit it, conduct a conversation, establish an expectation. I think it's absolutely, in the vast majority of jobs right now, it's mandatory to do that, because that is present. There are expectations out there with managers. Whether they have voiced them or not is another question, but I guarantee you they're there, or they are just a question. Right? I mean, and you as an employee can do a bit of play and say, hey, look, I'm going to play with AI in this manner, or I'm thinking about playing with AI in this manner. Are you comfortable with this? Are there boundaries on this that you want me to engage in? I think so putting some thought into it, having a conversation, putting something out there yourself. If you're in an organization that does not have a policy in place, start one for yourself.
And I think even taking it a step deeper, right, where the policy may be like the umbrella, the quite generic set of rules. And then if you take it down a notch and understand, well, what does that mean for your particular department, for your particular team? And then once you start playing with AI, understand, I suppose, how at least try to gain some foresight how your job may evolve. How, if you're the note taker, or if you are part of a team, big project team, and it's your job to take the notes, well, that will probably go, as we said. If you are the person that collects the status reports at the end of each week, if you are the person who schedules the stand-up meetings, like that may go. So, and whilst that's an enhancement, I guess it gives you also a path for more creative thinking and more value adding into, well, what are you going to do with that free time?
Yeah, Christina, I was. My wife is going through a medical process right now. She's got a hip issue, and she's working with it, right?
Right.
There is a receptionist. Now, she just looks like a receptionist because of where she sits at her desk, right? And what she does, okay?
Yeah.
And she does receptionist stuff, right? She'll take a phone call and schedule stuff. But she's really brilliant. Denise and I were just talking about that. She is really brilliant because she's been there for a long time. The doctors trust her with information, and she'll say, if you go through that process, she knows because she's been there. She's been willing to learn. All right. So she's having a conversation. She's not, I'm not trying to pose her as what's the physician's assistant, which is someone who can actually do diagnosis of a bit, or, sit in on some meetings in replacement of the doctor, that sort of thing. But she understands that if you go to this place, it takes 10 days normally to get this scheduled. Or if you have this process and you don't feel relief in 3 days, then this is something that we're going to have a follow-on. And likely have a follow-on. So I'll talk to the doctor about this. I mean, she understands the nature of the practice and what happens within it.
Yes.
Right. Now, you could ultimately train an AI to do that.
It's not going to be the same.
Well, probably not. Probably not. Right. And it, again, is it going to know how to deal with the nuances of a patient and a patient's behavior? Right. Does she talk to, and I actually heard her talking to someone while I were in the waiting room of the office that to me sounded as if it was a rather nervous person. So she's having a different type of conversation than she's having with Denise and I about what's happening with Denise, right? Because she's not a particularly nervous person when it comes to this, right? So again, could you train the AI for that? Yeah, you could. A lot of effort, a lot of work. A lot of it comes from intuition when a patient first presents themselves, if they're a brand new patient. Okay, so when you talk about a job that looks like an easy target, I would suggest we really try to understand that receptionist. If you looked at her as a receptionist and a receptionist only, and you replace her with an AI, the amount of intellectual capital and efficiency that is not AI related efficiency that walks out the door is huge, right? She is every bit, or if not as much or close to, the main reason why we're comfortable with this medical practice. There's the doctor and how the doctors work with us, and there's this person as well. I mean, and that is we're getting the value proposition out of both of them. Right. So we need to be mindful of that.
Exactly. I was going to go a few steps back and say, for people that are in a position that AI is starting to maybe they feel like AI is starting to step on their toes and taking parts of their job, it's maybe to go back and really identify the value aspects. What is the value that you're bringing to the job? Like you were talking about the receptionist. Well, the value is not necessarily in scheduling the appointment. It's in the interpersonal relation. It's in reading the patient's behavior and emotional status and understanding, and offering an equally accommodating response, right? That is the value proposition. So when you're thinking about your job, I suppose it's not about, like you were saying, about the process and about the outcome. It's not necessarily about the steps of the process. It's about the outcome that you're creating for an organization. So understanding that and being able to enhance that outcome with the use of a tool. There's a famous quote that's been going around the internet, and I can't remember who the person who wrote it initially, but it was something like, AI is helping me to write at the moment so then I can do my washing. Would I like AI to do my washing so that I can do my writing? Yes, please. It was something along those lines. But I think that's a perfect statement for the current situation. You know, we want AI to take over these mundane jobs. We want AI to take the note taking, the scheduling of the meetings, all of these administrative tasks that don't necessarily add much of the creative thinking, the problem solving, the people aspect. So going back to that aspect, you know, how should we enhance our creativity with the use of AI? What have you found that within a business perspective, within a project management perspective, works together with AI to actually enhance our creativity?
Sure. Let's you mentioned process first. Let me talk about process here for a minute. Okay. To have a process and then say we're going to have AI automate the process, you could get into the very, very bad thing that is, and very, very suboptimal outcomes that occur in a lot of things with information technology projects where you have a bad process or an inefficient process, and then you choose a tool to automate it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to work in the aviation industry, and a friend of mine says, having a bad process and automating it is like putting afterburners on a mule. You're not going to go fast anywhere, and it aggravates the mule. I love that description, and I've seen that happen so often. We have a process. We don't want to change the process, so we're going to really muck up this tool. All right. Yeah. To have it support a bad process. Okay. AI's capabilities mean that we ought to be reviewing the process. So let's start that first, right? Yeah. Get a process in place and then look to see, where AI sort of elements can automate it. That's the first thing. The other thing, and you talked about writing. AI, how AI works is pattern recognitions, right? How AI works is prediction of the next thing based on, what it is it's come up with. AI writing is really, really easy to spot if you're looking for it because it's very patterned, it's very structured, it's very predictable because that's exactly what AI is doing. It says, based on this set of words, this set of thing, what would the next thing, most predictable thing be to put here?
Yeah.
Boom. Right? I have tried to have AI write like I write by giving it examples. And I think it does, it does better than when I don't give it examples. But I mean, when's AI going to come up with a description like afterburners on a mule? Really? Yeah. Right? But we laugh. It gives us a visualization. It's not predictable. And it is not patterned. And that's what human creativity is. And so I think it's a really good thing to generate creative ideas because it tells you something. You go, that's not valid, or that's only partially valid in my environment, but that triggers 3 more risks for me because of, what it is that I'm spotting. Okay.
Yeah.
Dave Burse, and Dave, on LinkedIn, he's got a lot of courses. He's fantastic. And one of the things that he talks about in creativity is that AI, when you're looking for AI to be creative for you, it's taking away all the messy bits. All right. And it's being predictable, which is not creative.
No.
It is inherently being designed to not be creative. Right. Although, you could pull some things together with inference logic that, and then come up with some ideas that, are novel or, could trigger some thought in a creative mind. But without a creative mind, that's not going to happen. Okay. Today,
Yeah.
that could change. But it has to go beyond the processes that it's using today to create its output, right? Pattern recognition at scale, predicting what's the next best thing is. It doesn't have true human understanding.
No.
If it did, it wouldn't come up with such crazy hallucination as it does, once in a while. And it's interesting when I find something in AI that I'm skeptical about. I love to use Perplexity. There's a number of good tools. That's the one that I use a lot. Perplexity and Claude. They're both really good at footnoting. And what I'll go is I'll look at it and I'll say, I'm not sure about this, or I want to validate it. And I think it's really good to validate, right? The AI doesn't validate itself very well. If it did, it wouldn't hallucinate. Okay. So I go to those sources and I can see where AI has extracted something that is relevant to what it is I'm asking it to do, but it is taking it out of the context
right.
of the source.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think we kind of go back to the question with what you're asking now in the creativity bit is this, what kind of creativity do you need? What kind of creativity you look for? What are you looking AI to? What are you intending AI to do for you? And I think you need to be very purposeful about that. As an organization guiding your people, as a project manager guiding your project team, and as yourself in terms of, how can it help? And get yourself educated, on prompting. Get yourself educated on what's working and what's not working, so you can, in absence of your management team doing that for you, you can pose that yourself.
Yeah. Here's a little spanner in the works that's been going at the back of my head since you started talking about
Go ahead.
predictability and, predicting what comes next in the process and the flow chart and the plan. I mean, project management, when it comes to straightforward project management, is quite predictable in a way, right? So you could argue that AI
should be predictable. You should be predictable.
Let me just finish it. So you could argue that an AI project manager, an LLM, will be perfect at managing a plan, managing stakeholders, managing the outcomes, and getting to what has been the initially defined outcome. Now, as we know, things change and move on. Does project management need to be creative?
We're dealing with humans, aren't we? We're dealing with humans, aren't we?
Yeah. And I guess,
look,
my question comes from the fact that, creativity is what makes us human. And at the end, even if we have the best plan in the world, even if AI has come up with the most sophisticated plan, the plan will soon change, as we both know.
I think I've said for years, even prior to the AI discussion and AI's presence in our lives, that project management is a practice that requires art and science. The science bit, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good. You can manage a tool. I mean, Microsoft Project or Primavera, some of those tools, you put in actuals and it can create a new, critical path. You put in some data and you can have it do a Monte Carlo analysis, right? You got to do a lot of work associated with that. And I'm sure that we're going to see, and maybe this is what Frank is doing in his thing, maybe that you can have it use some predictability items from AI and some other things, and create multiple Monte Carlo analyses Right? Fantastic, great science. Let's go for it. And is that going to help? Absolutely. Okay. But I would say there's humans in the exercise. There's the best way to communicate to stakeholders.
Yes.
There's understanding, I talk about work styles with people. And I think one of the most important things we can do is understand someone's work style. Right.
Yeah.
And there's four that I normally talk about. One is this is the person that wants to do something. They are really good at delivering tasks. But if you want to sit there and ask them to help you create a plan and talk about 3 options for getting something done, their eyes glaze over and they're ready to fall asleep. That's just, okay. So you know who that is. You know the person that absolutely positively does not want to go forward without a detailed plan. Then there's the person that always needs to look at 3 or 4 alternatives before they get something done.
Yeah.
And then there's the person that's very, very focused on who they're working with to get something done, as much as their focus is getting something done, maybe sometimes even more if, so the very social aspect associated with it. And they're good to have on your team, by the way, because they're usually great communicators. Okay. That's art. How do you use how do you use that? How do you mix these people together? How do you make sure people are getting along? And picking the right project team member to work with that key stakeholder. If you're on a larger project, the project manager can't do that for everybody. So who should, right? I tell this people all the time. It is not necessarily the person that is someone that can talk about the finances of the project should be talking with the finance manager, but that's not necessarily, or the controller of the organization. But it's not necessarily the smartest finance person, because if the smartest finance person is very, very detail oriented, and the key stakeholder you're talking about from the finance organization is sort of a visionary and wants to talk about high level concepts and flows and how things happen, they're not going to get along. They're not going to relate to each other very well. Right. So that's a simple thing. You do it once, but you want to monitor it. Right. So there's a bit of art associated with that.
Sure.
And I think training an AI with that level of detail, that's not speculation, to do that well, not so sure.
I think AI would be great for tailoring different outputs of the same plan, for example, to different types of stakeholders. And with
that's a great idea. I never thought of doing that. That is a great idea.
That would be a fantastic use of AI.
I think I know what my next play time on AI is going to be. I like it.
So there are so many different use cases that you can use it for. But again, going back to our main points, monitor the output and then refine it so that as the person, the best approach to the problem that you're trying to solve. The AI can help, and it's a tool, and it can give you a really good initial start. But that's what it is for the moment.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
We share a lot more strategies for how to incorporate AI into project management in our course, which is on LinkedIn Learning. If you haven't been able to take the course, I'm just going to put the banner on the screen right now, so you can grab that. It's called AI-Powered Agile Strategies for Modern Project Managers. It was a lot of fun filming it together, Bob. I thank you for the time that we shared and the giggles and the insights that we gathered during that process. It was a lot of fun. Now, I just wanted to thank you, everyone that was with us during that discussion. We obviously all scratched the surface. There's a lot more to talk about within this realm. We're keen to continue the conversation. So any comments, any questions that you have for us, please drop them in the comments below. If you haven't yet connected with Bob, please do so on LinkedIn. I've just popped his LinkedIn profile on the screen for you. Reach out to Bob. Anything else, Bob, for people? What is the best way for people to find you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's probably it. There are not too many Bob
LinkedIn.
McGannons out there. I think there are 2 or 3. I'm the only one. I'm the
You
only
can
one that
also
I
grab
know
his,
of with this. You could also grab the Intelligent Disobedience book.
the Intelligent
That's
Disobedience.
available on Amazon and that sort of thing. So,
Or go on LinkedIn Learning and check out some of his courses. As I mentioned,
yes.
he's got a extensive library of courses on LinkedIn Learning that you can learn from. Thank you once again, Bob, for joining me in this conversation. That
Thank you.
was so
Thank
a
you for the
pleasure.
invite, Christina.
Such a
It's good
pleasure.
fun. It's always good
And
fun to bounce around ideas.
great. Thank you so much, Bob. Thanks, everyone.